Most people think spending more on a watch means getting a better watch. Most people are wrong. The difference between a $15 watch and a $150,000 watch has almost nothing to do with telling time. It has everything to do with understanding what you're actually paying for at each level. These are the 7 levels of luxury watches. Level 1. Fashion and basic quartz. The Casio F91W, approximately €15. This is level 1 in a single watch. The Casio F91W has a resin case, a plastic crystal, and a quartz module that costs Casio a few euros to source. There is no mechanical movement inside, no sweeping hand, and no finishing worth mentioning under a loupe. And yet, here is what most people get wrong about level 1. This watch tells better time than most mechanical watches, costing 100 times as much. Quartz accuracy at this level is within 15 seconds per month. The F91W has a quoted battery life of over 7 years. Navy SEALs have worn it on active missions because it is reliable, cheap to replace, and does not reflect light. There are F91Ws bought in the 1980s still running today. This is not heirloom horology. It is a digital tool that refuses to die. The problem is not what the F91W does. The problem is what it cannot do. It cannot become something you care about, service, or pass on. There is nothing inside it that justifies long-term ownership. Buy it like a piece of kit. Use it hard. Don't expect it to mean anything. But if you want a watch that actually means something, the next level changes everything. Level 2. Gateway Enthusiast. Seiko Presage Cocktail Time SRPB 43. Approximately 300 to 400 euros. This is where real watchmaking enters the picture. The Seiko Presage Cocktail Time SRPB 43 has a 40.5mm steel case and a deep blue sunburst dial that catches light the way dials costing 5 times as much are supposed to. Underneath it, through the display case back, is a genuine mechanical movement you can actually see working. The caliber inside is Seiko's in-house 4R35. It has automatic winding, manual winding, hacking seconds, and a 41-hour power reserve. Seiko manufactures that movement themselves, which is rarer than it sounds. Most brands at this price are buying anonymous modules from third-party suppliers. Seiko builds the whole thing. Here is what most people get wrong about level 2. They treat it as a stepping stone to something better. It is not. The Cocktail Time has generated genuine passion from collectors who own watches at every price point and keep coming back to it. The combination of mechanical soul, visual quality, and accessible pricing is almost unreasonable. This is the lowest level where a watch becomes something you service, keep, and hand down rather than replace. Real watchmaking starts here. Everything below is a tool. Everything from here up is a relationship. Once you know what a real movement feels like, the Swiss version of this conversation starts at level 3. Level 3, Entry Swiss. Longines Hydro Conquest 41mm, approximately 2,000 to 2,300 euros. This is where Swiss made starts carrying real weight. Not because Switzerland automatically means better, but because the regulatory framework around that label actually means something. At least 60% of manufacturing costs must occur in Switzerland to earn those 2 words on a dial. That is not a guarantee of perfection, but it is accountability. The Hydro Conquest ticks every specification box in this category. 300 meters of water resistance, ceramic bezel, screw-down crown, sapphire crystal, steel bracelet, and powering it, the Longines L888 caliber with a 72-hour power reserve. For around 2,000 euros, you are getting a watch built to serious professional dive standards. Here is where beginners make a critical mistake. They assume they are paying for a logo. Some of that price is brand heritage. Longines has been making watches since 1832, but the Hydro Conquest competes directly with watches costing twice as much and loses very little ground. It holds its value better than most things in this category and will run daily for decades with one service every several years. This is often the smartest first serious watch anyone can buy. Genuine Swiss engineering, professional specs, real longevity without tipping into the levels where emotion starts outweighing engineering. That shift happens next, and once it does, specs alone, will no longer be enough. Level 4. Enthusiast Luxury. Grand Seiko Snowflake SBGA 211, approximately 5,000 to 6,500 euros. Now we are in completely different territory. Not because the specs are dramatically better, because the watch is doing something else entirely. The Grand Seiko Snowflake. Titanium case and bracelet, hand-finished using the Zaratsu polishing technique. Flat, mirror-sharp surfaces created one at a time by hand, not by machine. A dial that literally replicates the texture of snow-covered terrain near Grand Seiko's studio in the Shinshu Mountains of Japan. And inside, the spring drive caliber 9R65, a hybrid movement that uses a mechanical mainspring regulated by a magnetic glide wheel for accuracy of around 1 second per day. If you are finding this breakdown useful, hit subscribe, because from here up, it gets genuinely complicated. Here is what most people get wrong about level 4. They compare the spring drive to Swiss movements on a spec sheet and try to decide which is more impressive. That is the wrong framework. The Snowflake is not competing on specs. It is operating in a different register altogether, one where craft, design philosophy, and material expression matter as much as caliber architecture. Two watches at this level can share the same base movement, the same water resistance, the same steel grade, and one costs 3 times as much because its logo carries a history that becomes a line item in the price. The Snowflake earns its premium honestly. Not every watch at this level does. Know which one you are buying. The rule at level 4, only spend here once your taste is genuinely formed. Emotion matters now as much as engineering, and if you think emotion drives the price at level 4, wait until you see what drives it at level 5. Level 5, Icons and Status Pieces. Omega Seamaster Diver 300M, model 210.30 Son, Cordu .20 Spon. 1. Approximately 4,500 to 5,500 euros. This is icon territory. The Omega Seamaster Diver 300M is 42 millimeters across, and it offers 300 meters of water resistance. It has a ceramic bezel, a sapphire crystal, and inside, Omega's caliber 8800 with Master Chronometer certification. That means it is passed testing by METIS, the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology, for anti-magnetic performance, accuracy across multiple positions, and power reserve consistency. The standard is rigorous. Most movements in this industry never attempt it. At level 5, something changes that no specification comparison can fully capture. These watches have presence, not in a pretentious way, but in the way a well-tailored suit has presence. You feel it before you can explain it. The Seamaster sits in the same conversation as the Rolex Submariner, which retails thousands higher, and it gives up very little of what actually matters on the wrist. Here is the uncomfortable truth about level 5. You do not need to be here to own an exceptional watch. A Grand Seiko from level 4 will make you happier on the wrist from a pure wearing perspective. But if you are buying one serious watch, the one you keep for 30 years, the Seamaster Diver 300M will never embarrass you. It will still be relevant, and it will still hold meaningful value. That combination is genuinely rare in any category of object. Only climb to level 5 if you intend to keep the watch long term. Repeated buying and selling is where people get burned on spreads, taxes, and regret. Everything up to this point still lives on wrists. What comes next lives mostly in safes. Level 6. Haute Horlogerie. A Lange Söhne Long 1, approximately 25,000 to 35,000 euros. Now we are in a different conversation entirely. The A. Lange Söhne Long. When Lange relaunched in 1994, after decades of forced silence following the division of Germany, this was the watch they showed the world, an off-center dial layout unlike anything else in production. A proprietary big date mechanism with the most legible date display in haute horlogerie. And inside, a movement containing roughly 360 individual components, with a 3/4 plate in German silver, screwed gold chatons at every jewel, and a balance cock hand-engraved uniquely for each individual watch. You are not buying better timekeeping at level 6. Modern movements at level 3 keep more accurate time than this. What you are buying is hundreds of hours of human skill applied to a movement most people who own it will never actually look at. That level of commitment, finishing surfaces that exist entirely out of view, is either completely irrational or the purest definition of craft, depending on how you look at it. Here is what most people get wrong about level 6. They assume haute horlogerie is Swiss territory. The Lange 1 is German, built in Glashütte, Saxony. Among serious collectors, its movement finishing is considered the benchmark, the standard against which Swiss rivals are quietly measured and often found wanting. Only enter this level if you already own and love watches from lower levels. This is about appreciation of craft, not rational utility. The price-to-use ratio here is almost impossible to justify, and that is entirely the point. But even the Lange 1 is still a watch you can wear. Level 7 is where that stops being true. Level 7, collector grade and ultra rare. Patek Philippe Nautilus, 57111A, retail approximately 27,000 euros. Secondary market, 100,000 euros plus. We have officially left the world of wearing watches and entered the world of stewarding them. The Patek Philippe Nautilus 57111A is a 3-hand steel sports watch. 39 millimeters, no complications beyond the date. It retailed for around 27 to 30,000 euros. After Patek Philippe discontinued it in 2021, secondary market prices exceeded 100,000 euros almost immediately. The blue dial reference peaked above 130,000 euros. That is not about the watch. It is about scarcity, history, and a very specific kind of desire. The 5711 has become the archetype of modern watch speculation, a case study in what happens when a brand with absolute credibility produces a limited object that an entire collector community decides to want at the same time. The movement inside is exceptional, but no movement is worth 100,000 euros in a steel case. What you are paying for is provenance, mythology, and the privilege of owning something the market has decided is irreplaceable. Here is the uncomfortable truth about level 7. The watches that cost the most are usually the ones least accessible as watches. Too valuable to wear daily. Too significant to risk scratching on a doorframe. Most of those Nautilus watches now live in climate-controlled safes and get photographed for insurance purposes. The wrist experience does not scale with the price. What scales is scarcity and the irrational, beautiful logic of a market built entirely on wanting. Unless you're deliberately building a collection or allocating capital like a fund manager, skip level 7 entirely. That money buys 5 exceptional watches from levels 3 through 5, worn across different years, different moments, different versions of your life. That will give you more than any watch you are afraid to scratch. So where does that leave you? The sweet spot is levels 2 through 5. That is where real value lives. Everything above it is diminishing returns. Everything below it is disposable. The best watch is the one you actually wear. Like and subscribe for more.